Morning folks, I'm Dave Canterbury with Self-Reliance Outfitters in the Pathfinder School, and I thought today we would discuss the bowl adze and creating the concavity of a bowl using an adze and a mallet. Stay with me. Alright, so I have 4 different types of adze here in front of me, and 2 of them are hand forged by me. One of them is hand forged by my buddy Brad Holman at Rocky Woodland Forge, and the other one is a purchased adze by a company named File, which is a Swiss company. And all of the adze have one thing in common. A bowl adze is generally beveled on the outside and not beveled on the inside. So you have pretty much a straight edge on the inside and the bevel is to the outside. And the reason for that is so that when it goes into the material, it actually lifts itself out of the material as you're carving that concavity in the wood. And you can see Brad's is the same way. The bevel is to the outside and the inside is pretty much a flat surface. Now you can easily make one of these yourself if you have the ability to do rudimentary blacksmithing. This adze, exactly the same, beveled on the outside, pretty much flat on the inside, was fashioned from a rock hammer or a brick hammer. And I just heated it up in the forge and reformed it and then filed and sanded it down to the desired profile to make the adze. This one is a more primitive style adze that was made from a horsehoof rasp, and again it's rounded over and beveled on this side and the inside is relatively flat, and it's used exactly the same way for hollowing. It's just a more rudimentary and primitive version of the more modern manufactured bowl type adze, and you can get these by companies like Grancers Brooks as well. But this one by File is considerably less expensive and more available than the one from Grancers. And if you're looking for a good handmade adze, I would definitely strongly recommend Brad Holman. He makes a great adze. This one's got some really good weight to it, so it doesn't take a lot of effort put into it to get a good chip or a good carve away into the material, whereas some of these that are lighter heads, like this brick hammer, it's fairly heavy, but it's much lighter than Brad Holman's. And then of course this one is much lighter altogether. The other advantage to, say, this style that Brad makes or any of these others over this style is that you can actually use a mallet in conjunction with this for more controlled carving, and you can't do that with this tool without probably breaking out the handle or something like that. This tool is made for nothing but hand carving and hand swinging, whereas these tools that have the square pole in the back can be batoned or malleted on the back to give you more control in your carving. Okay, so we've got a piece of poplar here at the cross section of our log. And we've gotten rid of most of the pith or the heartwood here that's dead anyway. We've flattened out the back side. This will be the bottom of our bowl. And we're going to carve it from this side, and I've carved the outermost edge of my bowl and then an inner edge to give myself a little bit of room if I make mistakes. And a lot of that's going to come from this hammering action with the adze versus hitting it with a mallet. Now we want to lock it into something, and to do that I'm going to use this woodland vise and workbench that I've got here, and I'm going to take this thing and just shove a wedge in there of another piece of poplar if it's big enough. If it's not big enough, I've got another wedge. It's not a big deal. And I'll just smack that dude in there really good, just like this. To hold that in place. As I work the bowl. And that should be a good solid holding point to be able to work this bowl with tools now without it moving around. Okay, now one of the mistakes that I made when I first started carving a few of these bowls was I tended to try to go from the outside and go into the center, and I think that it's better if you start a little bit more centered on that bowl. And you can see I'm hitting this with a mallet, bringing up the grain, coming across the grain, and I prefer to do this with a mallet more than to sit and swing at it. And you can do the swings. It's not a problem. But you don't get near the control that you get with the mallet. And you're much more likely to make mistakes doing it this way than to come in here with a mallet and be very controlled about everything that you do. Especially when you're cutting across grain and along the grain where you may lift something up and split your bowl out in an area you don't want to split it out. And this really is a game of extreme patience, because this takes a while. But it's relaxing and it's rhythmic. And you just go at it from all four sides until you get what you want. Don't try to go too deep and take too big of bites. Take small, shallow bites and let the tool lift itself out of the wood. And we'll get one of the other tools and use it. Show you how that looks too. This is the Brad Holman tool, and it really bites well into this stuff. You can see that thing just digs right down in there. I really like Brad's tools. He does a great job. And again, you know, you really goes right back to that whole peaks and valleys of processing material that I've talked about in the past, because you're creating a valley when you take that adze down in there, which creates two more peaks or ridges here that you're going to remove the next time around. That's just going to create two more peaks. And so you're fastening the material very much like you would if you were carving in stone, like napping. And I much prefer hitting with a mallet to swinging the tool, especially for a smaller bowl like this, because you get a lot more control and it's a lot safer. You're not going to get ricochets off the material that may harm you. You're not going to do as much damage to the tool if you miss or have a mishap. There's lots of advantages to using this tool with a mallet, just like an axe. Now as I get into areas where I'm trying to do a little bit more fine work, I'll reduce the size of my mallet to increase my control level. Okay, so if you get this thing deep enough on both sides that you can get that tool down the middle, you'll get yourself a pretty smooth finish. Remember that your depth is dictated by the thickness of this log, and you always got to check that with your thumb and your finger to make sure it's not going too deep in here, because you're going to take material off the back of this to finish the bowl. And you could leave it rough carved like this, or more of a chip carving, or you could come back in here with a sharper or smaller gouge, or even some type of a cabinet scraper, and clean this out and make it just baby butt smooth if you wanted to. Process, but it's really much more controllable and easier to use a mallet in conjunction with that tool than to actually swing that tool. I appreciate your views. I appreciate your support. I thank you for everything you do for our school, for our family, for our business, for all of our sponsors, instructors, affiliates, and friends, and I'll be back with another video as soon as I can. Thanks, guys.